everybody, and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be talking about Superman Unlimited issue 9, written by Dan Slott with art by Mike Norton, colors by Marcelo Maiolo, and letters by Dave Sharp. Superman deals with one of his oldest rogues, the Prankster, this issue, as at the Bronze Swan, Steve Lombard, Vicky Vale, Jack Ryder, and Clark all have drinks at the bar, sharing some of the recent stories they've all covered, all of which have seen various billionaires, socialites, and wealthy being killed off in rather slapstick and stupid ways, like having pianos fall on their heads or drowning in pink paint at a gender reveal party. Of course, Clark doesn't find any of this humorous at all, despite what Steve Lombard says, especially since all of these people were actually doing some good. What with all of the help their charities were doing and how their progress their companies were making to help build a better world were doing. Dan is finally getting us back into the Daily Planet crew with some new additions, Vicky Vale and Jack Ryder, who recently came to Metropolis because Jack Ryder technically is Creeper and he's kind of been living in Metropolis for a little bit. But I really like what Dan built in those early issues of this series with him tackling different parts of the Daily Planet, because the Daily Planet went worldwide and they have different offices here and there, and we got to have a mission with Jimmy and his new friend from Ape City, and then Ron Troop was there, and I like that we've moved on to a newer group with Clark also being involved in it, and Clark getting a moment to be in a story that's more reporter focused, Clark-centric storyline instead of a Superman-centric storyline. Clark figures that these deaths were the work of one person, but has no idea who. Upset, he can't seem to find anything out. Soon their little meeting winds down and Clark is reminded of his coverage of Mayor Perry White's press conference. Later across town, Clark joins the press pack at Perry's speech, hearing from the mayor about how Chief Krakoa and his new Sergeant Billy Henderson, alongside the SCU division, has successfully taken down the Intergang Advanced Weapons Division. I'm glad someone actually remembered Chief Krakoa is actually here and part of the cast of the Superman family. Joshua Williamson created him to be part of his Superman ongoing. He was there in the early issues, and then he just all but disappeared, and everyone, much like a lot of the stuff in Joshua Williamson's run, just kind of disappeared and nothing really ever came of it, and I'm really upset about that because it seemed like a pretty cool character. I always like when Superman gets involved with the authorities in his city, or works with the police or the fire brigade or something like that, and I thought that might have been an in for more of that, but it didn't really happen. So I'm really liking that Dan Slott is actually going that route here and actually giving Clark a bit of a story here too. The same goes for Perry becoming mayor, which barely had any spotlight since he won the election, but I'm glad Slott is at least trying to give him part of a story and part of something across this 2-issue arc. Perry assures the press that Intergang and the Mannheim crime family won't be a problem, although Clark asks how Bruno is running all of this if he's already in prison. Mayor White reveals that his sister, Minnie Mannheim, is in control of the criminal empire now, but she is no concern to him as she's just a small-time crook. Quite literally, because as we'll find out later, Minnie actually lives up to her name and she's a very, very small woman, which is really funny because Bruno's usually depicted as like a big hulking guy. Minnie hears about the press conference and seeks to change the mayor's opinion on her as she meets with the Prankster, wanting to hire the villain and his services. I like that Prankster is back looking like Alfred E. Newman, since there was a moment there where they kind of just took the charm away from him, I think, and just kind of made him just a regular dude with a mustache and a weird beard, facial hair. He was just like a normal looking guy, and I've missed this version of Prankster in comics for a while. It's great that he's back. Oswald agrees to Minnie's offer, and as she leaves, Prankster's nephew, who also uses the Prankster moniker, arrives, phasing through the walls as Oswald asks if he is taking Minnie's offer. Prankster is happy to use the metahuman powers he's been given to do some pranks, learning his target is to be Mayor Perry White. The next day, Steve invites Clark to see the Metropolis Meteors play at their home stadium, and as fate would have it, Perry has been invited to throw the first pitch of the game. Perry steps out onto the mound and throws a pitch, but Clark can tell something is off as his super senses are picking up something strange. Suddenly, all of the balls the crowd got given as souvenirs fly out of their hands and directly at Perry. Luckily, Superman shields Perry from the burning them all up with his heat vision. Now, I always like when Prankster is used in a book, since the way he goes about his plans is always really fun, and watching him try to kill Perry with America's greatest pastime is quite good. Superman finds that Perry is taking all of this in his stride, and the mayor tells Superman that it would have been a funny way to go, which makes Superman suspicious since there's been a lot of funny deaths lately, leaving him to go see if any clowns have broken out of Gotham and have come to Metropolis for a vacation. Okay, so I really like that Superman doesn't even think that it's the Prankster, since he's just so far down the list. He thinks it's the Joker before it's even one of his own villains. That's really funny, and it's also kind of true. Prankster isn't a top tier Superman villain. He's literally always just been kind of like a guy who's just, likes jokes and likes pulling pranks and just annoys Superman every now and then. But that's what I like about him. I like that he isn't, kryptonite gorilla or the despot of a dying world or something that Superman has to fight. I like that it's just a guy who just kind of annoys Superman every once in a while with his pranks and what he does around the city. Clark also thinks of someone else it could be, contacting his son at Steelworks in Smallville. As it turns out, Jon and Steelworks have been investigating cross-dimensional mergers, with multiple opening and closing in Smallville, something which Clark actually wanted to talk to him about. Clark asks if there've been any from the fifth dimension, but before he can get an answer, the phone is hung up and Mxyzptlk appears before Jon, telling him they need to talk real quick. Dan is really going all in on this two-parter story. We got Mxyzptlk here in the mix now with Pranksters, and I really like how he's incorporating the stuff he did with Jon 2 issues ago, and also getting Jon to interact with Mixie as well, because I don't think technically he's interacted with Mxyzptlk like on this type of level where they're talking with each other. He's been in stories where Superman has been there with him and Superman's been talking with him in his presence, but never these two have actually interacted. And I know Jon did fight like a chibi version of Mxyzptlk a while back when he was the Super Son, but I don't know if that's canon anymore. I really don't know what the hell's going on with Jon, but I do like that they seemingly are sort of course correcting a lot of this stuff here and actually giving him stuff to do in this book and actually giving him some sort of life. They're actually making a character out of him. Jon tries to get Mxyzptlk to leave, but the imp actually came to warn him about some big trouble coming in the form of Master Tiz, a fourth dimensional demon. Jon isn't overly worried, but Mixie can't contain his fear, since as the fourth dimensional being, Tiz is forever and will never go away, and not only that, he is Jon's greatest arch enemy. So this is all set up for Reign of the Superboy stuff, but Dan again using Jon very well here and even building out an arch nemesis for him, which he has not had at all. They've tried to make different characters work, but the problem I've always had with Jon is that he always ends up fighting like a younger version of a character who his father fought. Like he's fought kid versions of Lex and the Joker and all of that sort of stuff, or like Henry Bendix, another bald industrialist, stuff that is basically just the same as what his father fought. That sometimes is just like a recolor, but I like what they're building with Tix here, where he's a different imp. He's something that even Mixie doesn't actually like, and I'm intrigued to see what exactly is going to happen with this, because Dan's going to be writing, I think, a bunch of this Jon-centric stuff throughout Reign of the Superboys, so he's got something set up for him, so I'm intrigued to see what the payoff for that will be. The next day at Centennial Park at the Superman statue, Perry gives Superman the key to the city and personally thanks him for saving Perry's life. This makes me wonder how many keys Superman has for the city, and what does he do with them all? Does he have a big keychain? Does he use them as paperweights in the fortress? I love to see what Superman would do with all these keys to the various cities that he no doubt has. While Superman accepts the key, a faceless man in the crowd pushes a button on his wristwatch, and suddenly all of the gold paint on the key dissolves and it's revealed to be made of pure kryptonite, which triggers Superman's golden aura form. The man from before starts a 200-second stopwatch as Superman's statue comes to life, the eagle trying to attack Superman, followed by a plane falling from the sky, and then finally the Superman statue beginning to move. So this got a kind of a big smile out of me after I realized what was going on. Dan has Prankster use the old "it's a bird, it's a plane, it's Superman" saying as the prank against Superman, as the weapon against the hero. This is so creative and so much more better than him just, fighting the villain one-on-one, fist fight, villain's got a big kryptonite weapon or something, which we've seen a couple of times in this book. I love that it's just something different for a change. Superman saves the plane from hitting the crowd before rushing to save Perry, who's stuck on the podium thanks to some super sticky gum on his shoes. The giant statue comes down on top of Perry, but Superman uses his super breath to blow it in the opposite direction, and just in time too, as his powers finally deplete themselves. In the aftermath, Superman finds that one of Perry's security, a man named Cole, was injured when he pushed Perry out of the way of the statue. Superman knows this is all his fault as they are out in the open honoring him again. So he grabs the kryptonite key, and despite it hurting him, he tells Perry to give this to Cole, since he's a real hero and he has earned it. Thanks to the kryptonite depleting his powers, Clark can't see or hear who caused all of this chaos as Prankster, the metahuman Prankster that is, sneaks off into the crowd, knowing his third time targeting Perry will be the one that finally gets the mayor. Again, Dan is working kryptonite and its wide availability into the story really well, just giving us little bits here and there that also show how Superman is beginning to feel the strain of working in a world filled with this stuff that can actually hurt him and probably kill him. Not only that now, it also means that people around him are getting hurt, like Perry and Cole. Superman wants to do something about that as later, Clark delivers a news report on the Daily Planet, talking about how the mayor and many other people of interest were deliberately targeted by someone. Clark believes that he knows who is behind this, telling the watching people and the pranksters that he believes that Central City's own Trickster is the one behind all of this, which pisses the pranksters off. See, I love this. Of course, Clark is baiting the real villains out into the open so they'll target him directly, but also make mistakes. And I love that he even knows that Prankster isn't worth shit and knows saying this will probably get his attention, or I mean, he probably doesn't even know it's Prankster yet, but he knows it's going to get whoever is behind this to actually take notice of him and then target him, which is what he wants. He wants no one else hurt, he just wants Superman to be hurt. Clark's gamble soon pays off as Prankster decides to pull out his A-list material for Clark Kent, since he's going to kill the reporter alongside Mayor Perry White. Superman Unlimited issue 9 was a really light and fun issue that reminded me of an episode of the Superman animated series, which is funny since Dan Slott actually worked on the animated series comics Superman Adventures around that time the show was on. Prankster getting to be the main threat across these two issues is great. I think he's a criminally overlooked smaller scale Superman villain, and when he's used right like he was here by Dan, he's fun. He's just fantastic. I love that the whole shtick is that he just wants to annoy you. And what's more annoying than, pranks and stupid gags and stuff like that? And it works really well with Superman here. I'm excited to see if he changes that formula up for the second part of the Prankster arc, and also what he has in store for us in the reign of the Superboys in issue 11. I'm going to give this issue an 8 out of 10.